Hello everyone. Here, Pastor Del here today. Today I want to talk on the topic of compatibility, but I want to look at cultural compatibility. In the Bible, the Israelites were asked not to marry into certain cultures because those cultures worshipped false gods. Some of those cultures were enemies of the Israelites, like the Philistines. They threatened the Israelites. They did evil to Isaac. Isaac would dig a well, they would bury it with dirt. They killed Samson. So cultural compatibility matters. Some people have gone into marriage, the wrong culture, an enemy culture, and they have lost their lives. So let's start quickly. Amos chapter 3 verse 3. What does it say? Can two work together except they agree? What is compatibility? Compatibility means to understand, to agree, to accept each other's values, each other's goals, each other's philosophy. Compatible people enjoy being around each other. Compatible people are not too concerned about changing the other person. I need to change this person. If they don't change, I cannot stay with them. No, they're quite okay with how the person is. So cultural compatibility, what is culture? Culture is a way of doing things. Culture it's a certain set of beliefs, a certain set of cultures, of customs, a way of thinking. Accepted customs, it has to do with even religious beliefs, even communication styles. Even in some cultures, people communicate in a loud way, maybe in what other people would consider abusive, but they communicate in a loud way. They shout, they talk loudly. In some cultures, in other cultures, they talk very softly. Why is cultural compatibility important? Why? There's a statistic that intercultural couples have a 10% higher rate than couples from the same culture. So that is statistics. If you're marrying into a different culture, a different tribe, a different country, a different way of doing things, a different way of seeing things, a different way of eating, different values, there's a 10% higher divorce rate among intercultural couples. So what are some differences between some cultures? In some cultures, men pay bride price. To marry a woman, you have to pay $5,000, $10,000, up to $20,000. Because the man pays that money, he believes he is the head. And the woman is not equal to him. The woman is underneath him. He paid for her. He paid her bride price. In some cultures, food is prepared a certain way. In some cultures, people grill food. In some cultures, people fry food. In some cultures, people season food a lot. In some cultures, people do not really season food that much. So there are all these cultural differences. In some cultures, there are male roles and female roles. The man is the provider. The woman looks after the children. That even goes with traditional roles. I've known couples to have divorced because the man wants the woman to work part-time to help him. The woman comes from a culture that believes that she should look after children. She should not work. It is the man's role to work, not her role to work. Her role is to look after the children, to cook, to look after the house. The man's role is to work. However, they live in a country where there are a lot of bills to pay. The man needs her to needs help working. The children go to school at 8 in the morning, they come back at 3:30, maybe 4 o'clock. So he thinks she can do a small part-time job during that time at home or somewhere. She wouldn't help him pay the bills. After a couple of years, he runs away. Too much bills on my head. So there are different cultures. So cultural differences do matter because, as I just said, there's a 10% higher divorce rate among intercultural couples. Remember, as human beings, we have personal differences. We have personality differences, and we have temperament differences: choleric, sanguine, melancholic, phlegmatic. We have personality types, and we have our personal differences. To now add cultural differences on top of that is taking our differences level to the next level, to a higher level. In some cultures, remember, people practice female genital mutilation. It is accepted. In other cultures, that is not accepted. In some cultures, there are rites of passage. You have to go through certain things at age 12, or when you become a teenager, they send you somewhere and you have to make your way back. A man has to go through certain things done to him by other men. A woman has to go through certain things done to her by other men. So there are certain rites of passage in cultures which your partner might not agree with. In some countries, people dress a certain way. In some cultures, people present food, gifts to the dead, they pour libation. Other people see that as witchcraft, or that is not their culture, so they don't like it and they don't want to do it. In some cultures, people dance to masquerades. In other cultures, people don't do that. In some cultures, family members can visit you and stay over at your house. In other cultures, you visit, if you want to sleep, you find a hotel to sleep in. So I'm just mentioning some cultural differences. In some cultures, the parenting styles, you can use a cane and discipline a child. In other cultures, you cannot really do that. In some cultures, there's extended family versus nuclear family. Extended family means you're raised by not just your parents, but your aunties, your uncles, sometimes even by the community. In some cultures, only your parents can discipline you. You're not allowed to hit someone else's child or to correct someone else's child because your values might be different. Collectivism versus individualism. The child is raised collectively. We look at the collective benefit of everyone, versus in some cultures it's about the individual or the individual family. In some cultures, polygamy is accepted. A man can marry one wife. 10 years down the line, he can decide to go for a second wife. 20 years down the line, he can go for a third wife. In some cultures, marry one. If you want to marry someone else, you have to divorce that one and marry someone else. So some cultures are different. They see things differently. Some cultures accept polygamy. Why? Because they accepted it because they needed people to work on the farm to produce more crops. They needed polygamy because they had intertribal wars. Men died. So they needed more children, especially men that would be trained to be able to fight and protect that tribe, so that another bigger tribe wouldn't come and destroy them, take their women, kill all the men, take their women, take their children. So it was important for them to have many children, which meant polygamy. Polygamy was accepted in the Old Testament, but in the New Testament, if you're a Christian, things have changed. Let every man have his own wife. So a couple have to discuss. Do you follow the Old Testament or do you follow the New Testament? Or do you follow both? Or do you have your own interpretation of Scripture? What is your interpretation of Scripture? So what are some of the challenges with cultural compatibility? There are sometimes misunderstanding and conflicts because two different cultures. You might have to adopt a different custom, or you might have to compromise with a different custom. Can you compromise? Concerning food, I know someone who married someone from a different culture. When he cooks, she cannot eat. When she cooks, he cannot eat. She brings her relatives over, they cook, they eat. He cannot eat their food. They talk the language. He doesn't understand the language. So he has to play with the kids or leave the house when her family members come over. So cultural differences do matter. Also, in some cultures, there's pressure from the family or community. Family members can give advice in the marriage in some cultures. In other cultures, that is not acceptable. Only a professional can give marital advice. So what should happen before a young person, if you're a young person and you're thinking of marrying into a different culture, think about this. You need to communicate. There needs to be mutual respect. There needs to be education of that person's culture. Can you accept cultural differences? Remember, compatibility is about being agreeing. Compatibility is about marrying. It's about being with someone similar to you or the same as you. If you have vastly different cultural differences, can the marriage really last? Have you thought about it? So if you're not yet married and you're married into a different culture, you need a lot to think. Whether it's from a different tribe or someone from a different country, you really need to sit down and discuss your cultural differences. Can you adapt to it? Can you take it? At a certain age, your children should go through this. Would you want your children to go through that, what that culture expects? Maybe female genital mutilation, or men have to go into a bush somewhere and come back and make their way back, or strange cultures. But to them it's acceptable. To you it might not be acceptable. So please think about this. But thank you for listening. Please like, Please share, please subscribe, please follow. Thank you. Please repost as well.